Good morning, Synergy family. Thank you for showing up, or at least tuning in to our famed Power 30 series, which we have the opportunity to interview an expert, somebody that can help raise our game and somewhere in the real estate field. And today we're joined by the famed Scott Lamborn. And if you see that bow tie, you will know Scott is in the house. Scott, welcome.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Really excited to go over this topic this morning. I have a feeling there's going to be a little bit of follow-up questions at the end, so I'll try to leave a little window for everybody to get those questions out. But also don't feel like you can't ask while I'm in the process. You really can't shake me, so go ahead and type those questions in. Or
challenge it.
Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted any day of the week. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for everybody in the audience, if you do have a question, feel free to put it in the chat thread. I'll be monitoring that, and I'll slip them in as Scott is moving between the topics. So, but let's get this show on the road. And Scott, why don't you give them just a 60-second elevator on you, the services you provide, then we'll deep dive into the subject at hand.
100%. Yeah. So yeah, I'm Scott Lamborn. Equity Title of Nevada is the title company I work for. I've been working for them about 6, almost 7 years coming up now, making me feel old. The fact that I've been here for as long as I worked at a law firm previous to this. I wasn't a lawyer. I didn't quit being an attorney to be into title. I was more of their IT guy. So I'm a little bit of a nerd. So when I got into, title, I wore a bow tie to my interview and I turned into the bow title guy. So I wear a bow tie every day as my little marketing stick. Even a couple things in my marketing, you'll see bow ties included, just as a little reminder of who I am. I get emails to this day, subject matter, bow tie guy. They might have forgot my name, Scott, but I'll still get a follow-up with that bow tie, and I'm totally fine with that. So, and my job is to help agents get more business, 100%, whether that's marketing, whether that's flyers, whatever that's data, whatever gets you more business is my game, and that's 100% why I've kind of jumped into the investor realm. And I work a lot with auctions and trustee sales and a lot of investors around town, wholesaling and all that. So that's why the subject matter today is going to be on trustee sale foreclosure auction.
So Scott, I've been down at the auctions before throughout my career, been 27, 28 years. And I will tell you a couple things occurred to me. One, there's some people down there making some serious money because you tend to see year over year the same type of people that are there. But at the same token, there's always opportunity for new people to come in. I know for me personally, my first several times attending, I felt very uncomfortable. I would even deem it slightly intimidated because not understanding the process. So for you to take the time right now and shed some light on it and kind of demystify some things, I think is absolutely invaluable. So I'm going to turn it right back over to you and say, take it away, Scott, and let's roll.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen because I do have a little bit of a PowerPoint that I did create for you guys to help with the process, give you some visualization as we go through this, because it is a little bit complicated. If it was an easy process, there'd be 100 people down there bidding on 6 properties just because it would be that simple. So there is a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of work that needs to be done to be successful down at the auction, trustee sale auction. And that's what I'm here to help you with, and the reason why I'm going to do the presentation. So let's kick it off. Boom. All right. So as you see here, if you can go ahead and if you want, you can scan that QR code with the bow tie on it. That's going to go ahead and download my contact card to your phone. So if you want to go ahead and get that done now, I'll also present that at the end of the slideshow as well for you guys to do if you want any follow-up questions or want to get my email and just contact in your phone. So certainly I'll give it just a minute for everybody to maybe scan that and get it done. And if you're not utilizing QR codes in your business, as crazy as it is that we're talking QR codes like 6 years later, when I first got into title, I was all about QR codes. I was like, oh, but back then you had to download an app to be able to do it. But it was so great because you can track everything. You can make a QR code do absolutely anything you kind of want it to. It can automate text messages. It can send them an email that's already formulated that all they have to do is send. QR codes are pretty much everywhere. I mean, I see commercials these days and they have like a QR code on the screen that actually works. You can just sit on the couch and pull up your camera and boom, it actually does work. I'm a nerd. I like to test those things out. But it is something that is easily trackable. And if you're not utilizing those to grow yourself and grow your business, you should probably contact me and maybe we can, implement that a little bit. So, all right, there's just one more spiel. You know, I am in sales. Just remember that as we go along. So,
Hey, nobody in this room will hate you for doing your job and doing it well, my friend.
all right, awesome. Well, appreciate it. Okay, well, today's discussion, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about trustee sale auctions. All right, that's the first and foremost, and that's a big part is trustee sale auctions because there are other types of auctions. So I'm going to go over what the other ones are, just if you are curious, but we're mainly going to talk about the trustee sales. We're also going to talk about when and where the auctions take place. How do you or your investor actually purchase down there? You know, is there cash money on? Do you have just a bag of cash? What's going on there? What role does the bank play in this situation? Can you get title insurance? Big question, big one. And that's why I am involved as a title company at the auction, is because we save a lot of people from getting, you know, dirty dogs that maybe aren't insured. HOA rules and regulations. Everybody loves those three dirty little words, HOA. I'm going to go over a couple tricks and, you know, just how to get past those liens. And then the biggest and most important part is the equity title daily lien report that we prepare for everybody, our investors, anybody wants to buy at auction. We do the lien research so that way you don't get burned with an uninsurable property. Okay. And then last but not least, but what if fees are associated with actually purchasing down there at the auction? All right, types of auctions held in Clark County. So just please know, we are only going to be speaking on trustee sale auction. I am versed in these other types of auctions, and I can, you know, definitely meet with you and talk about them. But today it is just so detailed to go to the live auction that is the focus on today. So trustee sale, those are actually the ones that where bank owned properties come from. And I'll get into how that even comes into play later. Probate auctions. So any home that goes through a probate actually gets auctioned off. Investors can go to probate and bid at $5,000 increments, you know, above those properties going there. Tax sale auctions. Now, we just recently had a tax sale auction for the first time in about 4 years, which is pretty crazy. But yes, there was a tax sale auction this year, and a couple properties did sell. So that is something that is happening. Doesn't happen very often, but they do happen. HOA foreclosure auctions, something that I would advise, unless you're some sort of attorney that works for HOAs, or, you know, you're very well versed in litigation, I would avoid any HOA foreclosure auction, period, end of story. And I'll get you into why that's a problem as well. And last but not least is online auctions. There are auctions being held online. I just don't talk about them very much just because they typically have their own title company. Some auctions actually don't give clear title. They're just auctioning off properties. So beware out there. There are some not so great auction websites, but if you're buying something from like an auction.com, it is going to be reputable. All right. So yeah, those are the types of auctions that are held here in Clark County. Okay, so there are two entities that sell properties down at the auction. All right, this is the live auction, and one of them is auction.com. The other one is Nevada Legal News, which is just a newspaper, but they also sell properties. Weird thing. So I'm just going to read this quote here. It's that Nevada Legal News is simply just fulfilling a legal obligation to cry the properties. Auction.com is here to sell them. And the reason why I point that out is auction.com only comes to town every other Wednesday. So every other Wednesday, and then every Friday, auction.com actually comes and sells properties. Nevada Legal News does it each and every weekday, excluding federal holidays. But when you get there and auction.com's there, they have like a table set up, a tent, they have the banners, they're all excited. The auctioneer is just really excited to cry the properties. They're promoting it online. They're doing all these things. They're selling this property. They're trying to get the most out of it. Now, do they sell more than the other ones? No, people are willing to pay. If the margins are right, they're willing to pay what works for them. But Nevada Legal News is simply the newspaper that has to post the notice of sale. And so they are the ones that just are fulfilling a legal obligation by crying these properties. And that term cry means auction them off. Yes.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is I know what it means, but I don't know if everybody knows what crying means.
Yeah. There are many tears, but crying is the term for when auctioneers actually, like, you know, all right,
we got to cut 20 and then sold.
Exactly. So there you go. That's exactly what it is. So when they cry him, the auction.com person is very excitable. You know, you can hear him. He's clear. He's willing. He wants to get the bid higher. Nevada Legal News gets up there and they're like, all right, we got APN number 1, 2, 3, 4. It is just night and day on what they're doing. He is simply just, you got to pay attention. Scoot a little closer to him if you need to. So just a little joke that we have. But yeah, auction.com definitely tries to get a little more excited when they sell their properties. But Nevada Legal News properties are just as good. So, all right. So how do these properties even get to auction? I mean, if you're getting foreclosed on with 30% equity gained in 12 months, I don't know what's going on in the back end there. That's a whole nother realm of questioning. But how are these actually getting there? Well, I hope everybody is familiar with what a notice of default is, or an NOD. But an NOD is the first step in a foreclosure process. So if I'm not paying my mortgage, you know, that bank's going to foreclose on my home. Typically, they don't start that foreclosure process until at least 3 missed payments. That's why we always hear the 30, 60, 90 late leads. But after those 3 missed payments, the bank is basically saying like they're probably not going to be able to catch up. You know, if you don't make 3 $2,000 payments, then you have to make the 4th one. All of a sudden, you're $8,000, you know, behind. There's not a lot of people that all of a sudden they just get the $8,000. You know, I don't bet horse racing, but we do live in Vegas, so you never know. It could happen. But yeah, so notice the default is the first step in that foreclosure process. And then once that is sent out, there is something that is a little bit more serious, the second piece of document, and just a little side bit. So once a notice of default is sent out, they can't restructure the loan. Lenders will not restructure that loan at that point. So this homeowner really just needs to do something with the home at that point. So that's why a lot of people get on those NOD lists to get leads and try to create some potential listings, because there's a little bit of urgency with that. A notice of sale is that last document before the property goes to auction. And what this says, this actually tells you how much is owed to the bank. So late fees, all that sort of thing, $328,000, 912.08 cents. It tells you to the penny what is owed to the bank. It also states when that property is set to sell at the trustee sale auction as well. It'll tell you the date and the time for that. And once that notice of sale is sent out, there's really like a 3-week timeline until that property will typically go to auction. The reason why that 3-week timeline is prominent is because legally, the bank has to publish the notice of sale, the auction time and date and address in a newspaper, a public newspaper, for 3 consecutive weeks. Just 1 day each week, but 3 consecutive weeks, they have to do that. Reason why Nevada Legal News is in here. And they're also a publication. That's probably where you might have heard of them before. So they're the ones that publish actually all the auctions. If you ever want to look at Nevada Legal News newspaper, it is the most boring thing you'll ever read, but good on you if you want to check it out. So, and you can subscribe to Nevada Legal News online as well. Just so you know, it is $1,000 for a year, but I have a way to access their properties for a little bit cheaper than that. So I'll advise going a different route because it's better than what they have to provide. So. Just a couple terms I'm just going to go over real quick. Estimated bid and total debt is the same thing. Okay. Estimated bid is just how much is debt attached to the property. That's just the Nevada Legal News term. Total debt is more of an auction.com term. And that also just means how much debt is attached to said property. All right. The banks do have a reserve price. It's just not public knowledge. So nobody knows except for the auctioneer and the bank what that reserve price is. But what they will do is a creditor's bid. So say the bidding stopped and they were way short of what that reserve bid would be. The auctioneer will go ahead and say, okay, creditor's bid placed at $278,000.12 or whatever that price is. And then people know, the investors know, like, okay, now this property will sell at least that. So I can bid 1 penny over, $1 over. There's no limit on how much over you have to bid. Of course, they'll ask for 280. The auctioneer is definitely going to try to get it up. But that creditor bid means that's the reserve price, and now the property is ready to be sold. They're willing to take a deal.
You know, I think that's an important point that you brought up because, you know, again, that intimidation that I was speaking about in the beginning, when you're there, there's so much happening so fast. So, you know, if somebody was to show up there, and whether it be the excitable guy who is rallying everybody from auction.com to get them excited, or the Nevada Legal News person just reading it, you know, as a new person there, how do you sit through comfortably and understand this is where you are right now?
You just gotta, I mean, I don't know how you become comfortable. I guess just going down there and actually seeing it a couple times.
What's the process? The first thing they do is they call out the property address, right?
Yes, the first thing they do is APN, property address. Well, the first thing they do is name all the cancellations because there are a lot of properties that cancel. So the first thing they do is they run through all the cancellations, and then if a property is set to sell, they'll put the APN number, the address, and they'll just have a starting bid, which is not the creditor's bid or that total debt. It is just a simply starting bid, and they'll give you that number, and then they'll start bidding from there. So if the creditor's bid or that total debt price is reached without having the auctioneer to say it, they're not going to mention like, oh, the reserve price is off. They're not going to blink an eye. They're going to keep getting a higher and higher price. But if the bidding does stop and slow down prior to that, they're going to go ahead and just throw out a bid saying, all right, guys, creditor's bid at 320. Just to get the, speed up the process a little bit is what will happen. And people are registered with numbers, and you simply just pull up your number, hold up your number. Most of the people that are bidding do have a little man in their ear talking to them, telling them what the number is. So yeah, that's technically the process. And it is held outside in a parking lot, real fancy place to sell a bunch of properties. But that's
awesome in July. I love it. Yeah,
good times, and we're all there. People bring chairs. If you're somebody that's always there, you typically bring a chair. There's a little curb in the back. We call amateurs row for those that didn't bring a chair and they want to sit down for a minute. So there's that. But nowadays there aren't so many properties going to sell. People used to bring chairs when there was 50, 60 properties selling a day. Now, today there's actually, I think, 28 properties scheduled to sell, which is the highest we've seen in quite some time. Reason why I've updated this auction class and is getting back into it a little bit more. Reason why there weren't properties going to sell, something called the moratorium, forbearance. There's a lot of that going on, and NODs just disappeared. They were illegal to be recorded against properties with owners in them. So now we're starting to see those NODs recorded, properties actually coming to sell from some of those people that weren't able to, refinance through the forbearance and couldn't sell the property. So we're seeing some of those come to auction now. So quick overview on what's going on, update on what's going on through 2022 and the auction stats. So property scheduled to be auctioned for the whole year were 727 up until I did these updated stats yesterday. 727 were set to sell, okay, in 2022. Now, sold to third party means it's sold to an actual investor, somebody like you, somebody you would work with. Sold to third party means it went to one of them. So 126 of those 727 sold to a third party. So there are a bunch of cancellations, a lot of postponements, some that are sold back to the bank. And that's the next subject there. 155 of those were sold back to the bank. 119 were one particular property with a bunch of APNs, a huge piece of parcel land. So there weren't quite as many as that seems that went back to bank. 119 was just the one subject there. 229 have been postponed. So that just means they're going to come back in the next month, sometimes 2 or 3 months, they'll come back. But they're going to come back to the auction. 217 were canceled. Reason for cancellation, like bankruptcies were filed, could have been list pendants filed against the property, ton of reasons for that cancellation, but 217 were canceled. And then what's set to sell for the rest of the month, April 20th, today through next Friday, are 101 scheduled properties. So how many of those will sell? Probably closer to 15, 20, but 15, 20 properties in about a week and a half is, a decent chunk. We all know what's going on in the MLS right now and how many listings are not out there. So there's that. And then the average sales price on all those homes that did sell to the third party was $278,000. That was just the average. The cheapest I think was around 70 something thousand. And the most expensive was like 680, 690. So somewhere in that range. I'd have to go back and look. But yeah, that's a little overview of what's been going on. All right, well, who's your competition down there? Because as Joe D's been saying, it's a little intimidating. It used to be a lot more intimidating when I first started going down there because there were 100 properties selling on Friday, which means there was 30 people there, people in suits on phones. You're like, what is happening? This is big money, big time. Nowadays, there's a lot less properties going to sell. There's a lot less people down there actually trying to buy. Last time I went, there was maybe 6 bidders down there, so not too many. 6
However,
to your point, with the expiration of the moratoriums and the fact that, interest rates are moving up and things like that, we can project forward probably the next year or so that you'll be seeing more, would be my expectations.
Yep, I would definitely assume so. I mean, NODs already have a tick up. Well, they've had a tick up since October when that moratorium officially ended federally, and they could start filing NODs in October. Reason why January was the first like real decent month of like a 25 properties sold, which was crazy because we would see 1 or 2 sold over the last 2 years each month. So it's definitely on the way up, trending upwards. So yeah, your competition. You got hedge funds down there, of course, when there's money to be made, there's hedge funds there trying to make that money, take it from us. So about a third of all properties that sell down at auction do go to the hedge fund representative. Blackstone is down there, and there's one other one, I forget the name now, but there's two gentlemen that are down there. It's been a lady. They kind of switch who their actual bidder is, but they're represented each and every day down there. You can just bet your bottom dollar, 120 degrees, rain, whatever, they're there. They're ready to bid. So, but don't get intimidated by them because they have their number. They're not going to go above it. Like they're stuck on 300,000. So if you can make 301 work, they're not going to bid over it. They're not going to try to bid you up. They get stuck on their number for sure. Now you have the flippers. This is the most common person down there. The people that actually buy to flip the home and sell it as soon as possible. Buy and hold and rent is another type of investor you'll see down there. It's just not as common. But hedge funds are seeming just to be acquiring properties and keeping them more lately. Before, buy, hold, and rent wasn't a model, but that seems to be more of a model with this big money, as we all know in real estate. So I have been seeing that a little bit more, honestly. So buy to live in. So this isn't very common, but I have met individuals down there that had the cash and they wanted to buy, or somebody's mom was coming from California and had 500 grand. They were just looking and came down and wanted to buy something for a deal and renovate it. So that does happen. I have met quite a few down there over the last 6 years. I've met quite a few of them that's happened with, but it's just not very common. And the last thing is new money typically equates to about 20 to 25% of sales each year. Now I haven't been able to do the numbers for this year yet. The last 2 years were pretty much non-existent. So the last true numbers were 2019 that I could do this, and it was 24% were new money. It wasn't hedge fund represented. It was somebody like you or me that kind of went down and just bought a onesie twosie investment down there. So
a little guy went in.
Yeah, exactly. Little guys can win down there too. Like trust me, I personally have purchased down there myself, so I know what it's like. I've lived it. So, well, how the heck do you buy down there? I've talked a lot about it. Well, you have to have all funds on person when you register to bid. Okay, that is a rule. It's actually a misdemeanor if you bid above what you have on person. So please don't do that. They will definitely send you litigation in the mail and try to get some money out of you. I've seen it happen. So don't do that. Don't do it at all. So
what does that mean? On person.
If I'm going to bid $400,000, I must have $400,000 on me right now. I can't go to the bank. I can't have a buddy that's going to drop off a little bit more money in 10 minutes. It's got to be on me right now. Because
what form? What form can that be in?
That's exactly it. So the next thing, treat the checks like cash. So everybody, because Nevada Legal News only accepts up to $5,000 in actual green, cash dollar bills. So they come in with cashier's checks. And you treat them just like normal dollar bills. So you come in with a $100,000 check, a $50,000 check, a 10, maybe a 20, maybe a 5 in there as well, a couple ones. That way you get as close to the true purchase price as possible, because when they don't have a refund machine right there, if you give them a $500,000 check and you bought a property for $350, you have 150 grand that they will mail to you. They're not keeping it. They're going to mail it to you, but they have up to 3 weeks to get you those refund checks. So a lot of people don't like that. So they just show up with a stack of 20 checks, 30 checks, different denominations, just like their dollar bills, and that's what they use to purchase the properties. So rules for when bidding for your investor. Just so you guys know, if you're going to bid and the checks are in their name, you're going to need a power of attorney to sign those over to them. What I would recommend is more of an LLC, and have you and your investor be managing members of said LLC. And that way you can just get the checks out like that and use it that way. That would just be the easiest. So there are a couple other trickier ways to make it work. We can go over those, sometime if you'd like. Not really something I'm going to touch on right now. So.
That's fair.
Got a lot to go through here, about 10 more minutes. So just wanted to get it going. So how much did the bank get? How much money does they get? Well, the bank is actually only allowed to take as much back as what's owed. They're not allowed to take any overage amount. So if the bank's owed $250,000 and the bid sold for $300,000, there's $50,000 of extra. Well, that's going to go to any other lien holders, any other, credit cards against the property, anything against the property, they're going to try to pay with that money. And if there's any left over, supposedly it gets to the homeowner that got foreclosed on. Not sure if that's true or not. So I've actually met investors that go after the overage in different states and then try to collect that for people for a fee. So not something I've seen really take off here. But hey, that's just what happens with it. All right, HOA can leave your investment DOA, which is dead or alive, if you didn't get it. So HOAs, big problem. They love to put liens on properties. It's their favorite thing to do, as we all know. If you don't have a weed, they're going to give you a fine. It's their favorite, right? Well, HOA foreclosures. And if you didn't know, the HOA can actually foreclose on homes. They can simply foreclose on you and kick you out, even though you have this federal mortgage of hundreds of thousands. Well, you don't make your $100 assessment fee for 8-9 months. Well, they're going to start foreclosing on you. That's what they're going to do. So it was a big thing back in the day, in the crash back in 2010, 11, 12, 13. There were so many HOA foreclosures, and there was ways to make a bunch of money from them. In 2015, there was a new statute, Supreme Court ruling, in fact, that basically gives the bank rights over the HOA foreclosures. And that's what we're seeing a lot of these properties come to sale, is that scenario. And I'm going to get into that just at the end when I go over to Lien Report. But
Hey, Scott, I just want to remind for our audience that our time is 30 minutes. Scott's got a little bit more information. If you do have to go, we do understand. However, if you have a question that's pressing right now, before we carry on, I'd love for you to throw it in the chat in case you have to get off. We want to make sure you get your question answered, and then we'll continue rolling. So, all right, not seeing any questions yet, but if I see any pop up, Scott, I'll interrupt you so we can get that addressed, and then we'll keep going. All right.
Great, no problem. Thanks, Jody. All right, so junior and senior liens. Junior is just a nice little word to know. Junior is underneath the deed of trust going to sale, and it will fall off after a certain timetable. Like on a property going to sale today, there's an IRS lien, a junior one, of $41,000. That seems very scary, but no, after 120 days after this foreclosure, that lien falls completely off. So there are some tricks when looking at this lien report that you're going to want to know, and that's where I come involved. So SNWA easements and UCC filings. Southern Nevada Water Association put easements on properties to give tax incentives to put xeriscape, go rock instead of grass. Well, if you want to put grass back in that yard, you have to pay back up to $10,000 to the city, to the water district on those tax breaks. So something you don't want to do, pay attention to those. UCC filings are solar panels. Solar, try to keep them on the properties after foreclosure, but they don't have to keep them on. So if you want to fight them, you actually can. I've seen them take them off. It's just not a pretty road. We can get into that sometime as well. It gets a little bit dirty though. Deed of trust positions. That's what DOT means. This is very important, but you never want to buy a deed of trust that's not in first position. Unless you know the person that has that first position deed of trust. If you buy a second or a third, you're basically just buying debt attached to a property. You don't actually own the property, because if somebody's not paying their second mortgage for the pool or whatever, probably not paying their first. And if the first forecloses, any other deed of trust underneath it, second, third, fourth, whatever, gets wiped out, and with no recourse, they're done. Okay, so never buy a second or third position deed of trust. Just pay attention to that. And also a very big warning is nuisance and abatement liens can get real tricky and real expensive. So anytime the city has to come to a property to fix the electrical, save it from becoming a hazard, nuisance and abatement liens put on it, they put $8,000 or whatever it costs for them to fix it. Well, there's also a civil penalty they can apply to that for $19,500. That could be a problem, and something that you as an investor would be responsible for. Now they're willing to negotiate some. I've seen it go from like 27,000 down to like 18,000 before. Still not a win, still 18 grand, but you can call code enforcement the day of the property goes to sale. They'll give you an up to date on how much is actually owed per that. that day. So something I would definitely advise if you see a property you'd want to buy with a nuisance and abatement lien. So, all right, well, what happens when you win a property? Well, you need to call me or your escrow officer so we can open up a prelim and get the true escrow opened, because you don't get a deed. You don't get a deed when you buy the property. You get a receipt that says, yes, you win the property. You give them whatever name you want it to put the property in, and they're going to mail you that deed. And they have up to 20, but they get it to you in about 7 to 10 days typically. And then they'll also get you that refund check as well, like I mentioned earlier. So when that comes in, we'll have the prelim ready. We'll be ready to roll. We're going to want to record that deed, because that 120-day time clock and some of these time frames, the FHA flip rule, don't apply until that deed's recorded with the county. So once you get that deed, getting it recorded with the county is something you want to do as soon as possible. And when that happens, there is going to be a $47 recording fee from the county. You also have to pay county transfer tax. We're all familiar with that. You're also going to want to get title insurance, and all my investors get what's called a binder title policy, which will basically just credits back the original policy when you resell the property. In this example here, and you guys can go back and actually look at it, the total paid with binder for the same property was $1,082. And if you did not get a binder and you just bought 2 separate title insurance policies, normal with investor discounts would have been $1,709. So it's about a $600 savings for a $200,000 property, and that will savings will be increased as the property value goes up. All right. Now, this is the reason why I'm so familiar with the auction and why a lot of people reach out to me before buying at auction. So this report that we do is prepared each and every day. So this morning, 7 a.m., I think is when it gets in. The person that prepares this, he starts working on this lien report. And this is everything that went to sell or is currently going to sell at auction right now. All right. So just a quick overview. The yellow means that it's a little bit tricky. We should be able to get title insurance, but there's a couple things we're going to need to get cleared before that. The white ones means we know for certain that we can get title insurance on that property. If you purchase it, the red ones, don't purchase that property. We can't get your title insurance. So if you buy it, don't call me. This is your warning. The pink, red.
God, this is an absolute invaluable tool right here. I mean, like, that's a game changer, because not only are you aware, you're saving yourself hours of time and research and figuring out the property. If you know you can't get title insurance on it, that's huge. Thank you for sharing that.
100%. This is, I can get you on my list if you want it sent every day, something that I do send out, but there are a lot of tricks within these liens that you're going to want to know about. So yeah, if it is something that you want to take more seriously, I'm happy to go over that with you. So this is just a little bit of a closer look. And I just wanted to point out here in the middle, the DOT information. If you notice, all these say first. That is where you'll see if it's a second or a third. Because just because it's a second or a third doesn't mean we can't get you title insurance. And you would just have to pay off the first before we get that. So it would be a yellow property. So I just like
Scott, for some of the brand new people that are new to the industry, DOT, deed of trust, right?
Deed of trust. Yep. Deed of trust. Sorry.
No worries. We just got to keep our lingo clean. Oh, look at that. Bang. Look at that thing. We're back to the smile.
It's an acronym thing. Yeah, exactly. So I know I was going over my time, so I just kind of zoomed through those last couple just to be able to get cut off here and answer any questions that are there. But yeah, so that's a quick overview of how to buy at the auction, what it kind of takes, and what's kind of currently happening at auction. So great talking point with investors. And yeah, if you ever have an investor you want to connect with me, we can either do a Zoom, meet in person, and I can kind of break it down for you. There are flip calculators out there I have access to that will help with creating some of those margins for you. Yeah, it's something I'm into, something I deal with all the time. So I go down and watch the auction a couple times a month. If you ever want to join me or check it out, definitely reach out. I would love to meet. So,
and I personally would encourage you to take Scott up on that offer, because whether that's, anytime in the short-term future that you have an opportunity to do this, or something that comes in your way, down the road, take it for somebody who is there like deer in the headlights. My first few times, it would much be better to be standing next to a guy like that, who's, kind of giving you a heads up of, hey, here's what's happening. This is what's going next. This is what just happened. Because a lot of times it happens so quick. You're like, whoa, what did I do?
What did that property sell for? That's
Yeah.
like the number one question. Like, what did it sell for? I'm like, yeah, you got to pay attention, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and bids come fast and furious for sure.
yeah, certainly.
Good. So at this point, I want to thank everybody for attending. I wanted to see if there was any questions. You can unmute if you have a question. Steve Valenti, I saw you kind of shake your head like, woof, that was a lot of information earlier. So hopefully that was a valuable information. You were drinking firsthand from a fire hose with a bow tie on. So
100%. There's a lot of stuff coming your way.
anybody have any questions?
Hey, Jody, there was just one question that Steve brought up about accessibility or what you can see about the property before you bid. And he was asking and just confirming, you can only see it at the curb, right? No access to the property before you do bids.
Correct. Yes. Now, sometimes there are pictures taken on auction.com. If auction.com is one of the entities selling it. Nevada Legal News, they don't care. Definitely won't have any photos for you. Just know that. So there's a clear difference with those entities. But yeah, you can go, you can look in the windows, you know what the rules are with that. I do have somebody that kind of drives properties for investors. She provides a better updated list. That's the person that I would recommend you to talk to, because she'll drive the property. I don't know what else she'll do, but yeah, she'll check it out for you. And that might be something worth looking into if you're serious about buying down there.
So Scott, put up your info one more time on the screen. For anybody that wants to take Scott up on this, you got his contact info right here. If you haven't scanned it, I scanned it, works. Go ahead or take a picture, whatever you need to do to get that contact info. And definitely give yourself the opportunity to learn more if this is something you want to become a little bit more proficient on, a little bit more educated. Certainly, if you ever speak to any investors, this is something you're going to want to know about, because they certainly will be hearing about it. They may not understand it, but you can help them, guide them through the process. So great opportunity and awesome. Thank you for taking your time, Scott. And for everybody that tuned in, thank you. If you're watching this on replay, we'd love to see you live on our next one. All right, guys. Bye from Synergy headquarters somewhere in the universe.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
thanks, everyone. You got it.